Two sweethearts were in love and were having a great life, but it all came to an end when an unexpected person stepped in. The girl was heartbroken to see what was happening, so she decided to erase that person, not just from their life, but from existence. As said by Boris Pasternak, failure to love is almost like murder, but little did we know, it is murder. Why am I saying this? You'll know soon. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Fear Files, where you find thrilling true crime cases. Today we're going to talk about the murder of a girl named Emma. It's a really interesting love crime, so make sure to stay till the end. A note before starting: Emma and Peter are not real names. Pseudonyms were used in all of the reports to protect their identities. So let's get started. In a midnight search, the dismembered remains of Emma would be found in a forest outside the city of Kalmar, some 36 kilometers from Askersund, Sweden. What had happened to Emma? Who had done this to her, and why? Well, I think some of you might have guessed it. Let's first talk about the main character in this story. Jonna Henningsson was born in 1989, and from a young age she loved horses. She often spent her time riding her horse and looking after it. She experienced childhood in a solitary town in the centre of Sweden. From the beginning, she was very inspired by her work, as she says, quote, "I have been associated with ponies my entire life." Nothing was off about Jonna. She was described as a very happy, outgoing, and even slightly childish but fun friend by the people who knew her. Jonna was scholastically skilled, and her teachers realised that she would go far in whatever she wanted to pursue. She likewise had a sister whom she used to admire. She grew up by following her footsteps. In the mid-2000s, she moved to a town in the south of Sweden, where her mother had settled after she separated from her father. But even after the divorce, she carried on having a decent relationship with her father. She would also get along very well with her mother's new sweetheart. Her friend Maria said Jonna was a very generous girl, and she generally let other people express themselves by not being hard on them. But she also used to have another side, a dark side. She could be both very tough and very stubborn. Maria says that Jonna had a steady boyfriend who was the same age as her, from the 9th grade and during high school. Maria doesn't recall anything particularly special about their relationship. Other friends who remember her also said the same. There was nothing special about her. One of her friends said she was very kind and funny, and just like any other girl. Everyone who knew Jonna is in agreement about one thing. The idea that she could have murdered and dismembered someone is completely incomprehensible. Even Maria, when she heard about the murder, said that it was something like a story. She says she still can't understand it, even though Jonna is convicted. On the 5th of June 2008, Jonna graduated from high school with honours. She had dreams of becoming a veterinarian or a doctor. Her relationship with her long-term boyfriend she had at school was just like any other young couple who had a good relationship. They were close to each other. Jonna chose to move and briefly lived with her dad before she moved into her own condo, a couple of miles south. In the spring of 2010, she began working as an hourly paid childcare educator. She began looking for a new young fellow with whom she could have a long-term relationship. Prefall of 2013, Jonna fell head over heels for Peter. Jonna would later proceed to say that Peter was like a drug to her. Peter and Jonna started dating. They dated for about a year. She had never been as in love with any other person. However, things got messy when she discovered that he was seeing another young lady. Jonna got pregnant with Peter's child. At the point when Peter discovered that Jonna was pregnant, he asked her to get an early abortion as they were both so young and needed more cash and a steady relationship to bring up a child. In any case, regardless of her vows to Peter that she would get an early termination, she never really did. However, sadly for Jonna, only half a month in the wake of discovering she was pregnant, she tragically lost the child. Jonna had been troubled by Peter's response to her pregnancy, later saying that it seemed like Peter simply couldn't have cared less about her. At the point when Jonna prematurely delivered, she told Peter that she'd had the fetus removed, and Peter responded in an extremely cherishing and caring way. He made a special effort to take care of Jonna and give her the consideration that she needed. She felt appreciated and looked after upon receiving this kind of love from him. During this period, Peter reconnected with an old companion of his named Emma. Peter and Emma had a history that went right back to 2008 when they were both in the 10th grade. They had been dating on and off since 2008, however the year prior to when Peter and Jonna met, the relationship finished for good. Jonna was upset that the pair had reconnected. She asked Peter to stop getting together with her and to stop conversing with her. Peter guaranteed that he wouldn't do either. He would stay away and stay with Jonna. However, that wasn't true. Peter kept in contact with Emma and they soon started dating again. It wasn't until Jonna saw Emma's name at the top of Peter's closest companion list on Snapchat that she understood that something was off. Peter and Jonna by this point had begun talking less, and Jonna began to acknowledge that the relationship was likely now finished. So she began to attempt to get over him by going out to clubs and bars and meeting up with men that she met on dating apps. However, to her, none of these men that she got together with were in any way similar to Peter. On one of Jonna's nights out, she stumbled upon Peter and Emma and stood up to them. She revealed to Peter that he needed to pick one of them, yet Peter said that he was unable to pick between them. He admitted that he was confused and was attempting to keep them both close until he figured it out. After this, Jonna met Emma a few times in pubs and nightclubs, and they always got into an argument. The last time they met was 2 to 3 weeks before the murder. Jonna went to speak to Peter, but he always used to upset her as he would change the plans for their meeting. One day when she was having a talk with Peter and his colleagues, Peter's phone rang. It was Emma. She came over to join them and they all started arguing. Eventually, both of the girls wanted Peter to choose once and for all, but he was so drunk he just ended up going home with his colleagues. Jonna and Emma stayed and discussed what could be done about their situation. Peter had said the same to both the girls, that he loved them. They were both sad but not angry with each other. They even hugged before going, but then Peter called them both over to have a talk. So later, after having a discussion that didn't really sort things out, Emma went home and Jonna stayed with Peter. This was the night when she told Peter that she was pregnant, so the following day he informed Jonna that he and Emma had had a talk and they wouldn't be meeting anymore. But a few days later, Emma called Peter in the middle of the night and he went out to talk to her. Jonna felt worried as she found it very difficult to trust him, even though he said he wouldn't be seeing her anymore. They kept visiting each other. Jonna planned on writing to Emma on Facebook to ask her to leave Peter alone so that they could have a peaceful relationship. She tried to be as nice as possible, but Emma never responded to any of Jonna's messages and instead complained to Peter about it. Peter then asked for the keys for his place back. This happened before the murder on the Wednesday. Jonna thought he wanted the keys so that he and Emma could hang out without the fear of her showing up. So she gave the key back and collected her makeup and other valuables, but she also left some of her stuff there. Peter never said that he was breaking up with her. He had only told her that he wanted to be alone for some time. And this is where things took a turn. From June the 14th to the 17th, Jonna began to Google concerning things like how to kill somebody, infusing toxic substances, and suicide postmortems, to name a few. She also began to conduct research on Emma. In the early morning of the 18th of June 2014, Jonna was outside Peter's apartment with a plan to stage Emma's suicide. She was going to knock her out with a single blow to the head with a hammer, inject alcohol and sleeping aid, place her body on a train track and leave a bottle of vodka nearby. But when Jonna struck the back of Emma's head with a hammer, instead of passing out, she began to scream. They started fighting until Emma fell. Jonna then dragged her into the bathroom. The doorbell started to ring and Emma was still screaming for her life. Jonna took her knife and stabbed Emma 17 times, but she kept fighting. Jonna then got up and grabbed a new knife from the kitchen, killing Emma with a single last thrust. By that point, the doorbell had gone quiet. Jonna quickly realised that it would be impossible for her to carry Emma's body by herself due to the weight. and this was when she decided that she would dismember Emma's body. She drove the 3 miles back to her place, picked up a saw and large IKEA bags. On her way back to Peter's apartment, she was pulled over for driving too fast, but was soon back on the road with nothing more than a fine. Back in the apartment, Jonna dismembered Emma's body into 4 parts with her saw. She placed the body parts in the IKEA bags and left them in the trunk of her car. Then she cleaned the apartment, and before she left, she wrote a note to Peter and made sure to knock at the neighbour's door to inform them that everything was alright and that she'd just had a fight with another girl. After that, Jonna drove to work. Peter called her during her shift and wondered if she'd heard anything from Emma. Jonna began to panic and left work early. She drove north and into a forest. By this point, Jonna was too exhausted, both mentally and physically, to dig holes for the bags, so she placed them by a tree and covered them up with leaves and twigs. When she returned home, she called her sister and told her she went to Peter's place to pick her stuff up, but had to stab Emma in self-defense when she started attacking her. She says she left, but later went back to check up on her, only to find the apartment empty. Jonna's sister told her, "Call the cops. They'll find her. It'll be all right." Jonna called the police, who showed up at around 9 p.m. and began to question Jonna on what had really occurred. She kept up the same story that she had disclosed to her sister, that she had gotten into a fight with Emma, which ended in her wounding Emma in self-defense. The police obliged the story until they asked Jonna how precisely she got into the loft. Maybe because of the fact that Jonna was intellectually and generally depleted, she was exceptionally tense and couldn't easily address the police officers' questions. The police yelled at Jonna, stating that she must be honest with them. That was the final straw for Jonna, who put her head in her hands and continued to tell the police how she had killed Emma and dismembered her body, putting her remaining parts in the forest. In the early hours of the next day, at 36 minutes past 12 midday, a police canine found the remaining parts of Emma in the forest. A policeman noted that a hand was standing out of a heap of leaves. An investigation of the crime location took place, and the remaining parts were taken to go through further assessment. The police at first captured 3 individuals on suspicion of homicide: Jonna, Peter, and another man. Peter's apartment was also cordoned off so that it could undergo forensic examination. The police had a confession, however they needed to discover the proof to help in the case and arrest Jonna. A couple of days after Peter was captured, he was cleared as a suspect. There was no proof of his involvement in the murder, and he was released due to the lack of evidence. On the 21st of June, it was reported that Jonna would be rearrested for homicide after confessing. The day after that, the police recuperated the homicide weapons. On the 26th of June, it arose that Jonna had rung a male companion of hers, who was remanded in custody when he admitted that she had contacted him and requested assistance with discarding the body. In any case, he had refused to help her. In addition, it arose that after Jonna had killed Emma, and Emma had unfortunately passed on, she had attempted to infuse vodka into her veins to make it appear as though she was inebriated at the point of death. On the 7th of July, the man that was remanded in custody was released and no longer a suspect. The police investigation was zeroing in on indicting Jonna. In mid-July, a fundamental mental assessment was conducted on Jonna to decide if she was psychologically competent during the murder. She was requested to go through a broad mental assessment. However, it wasn't until the 8th of September that the results of the assessment were released. They concluded that Jonna had not been experiencing dysfunctional behaviour or turmoil at the time of the homicide. That meant that she would be remanded in jail, as it was proven that she had no mental problems around the time of the murder. On the 19th of November 2014, the broad wounds that Emma had sustained were revealed to the courts. Emma had suffered 6 injuries to the rear of the head, with fundamental delicate tissue damage, a crack to the top and base of her skull, cerebral damage and swelling, 17 distinctive cuts sustained to her neck, lower face, throat, and the rear of her right hand, all with delicate tissue wounds. She also had a damaged windpipe and was missing teeth. From the neighbour's statement, the assault had gone on for a long time, from when Emma had first been hit on the back of the head to the last deadly cut, implying that Emma would have been in horrendous agony. She would have suffered over a long time frame before death. The neighbour recalls her shouting as a continuous thunder, and it additionally transpired that Jonna may have been inspired by a scene in the show Dexter. The preliminary hearing started on the 2nd of December 2014. Jonna's defence argued that she never planned to kill Emma, just to alarm her. However, as Jonna recalled her account of the homicide, a member of the court swooned, causing court to be suspended for a brief period. The court decided on the most extreme life sentence for the merciless homicide of Emma, due to the seriousness of the treatment that Emma experienced in her last minutes. On the 19th of December 2014, now 25-year-old Jonna Henningsson was condemned to 16 years in jail for the ruthless homicide of Emma. She was additionally sentenced for burglary. The media had started to reference Jonna as the Rider in the coverage of the case due to her love of horses. Around 12 days after the homicide occurred, a law change was brought into power, which changed the most extreme sentence for homicide to life in prison. However, as the homicide occurred before the change, she was only sentenced to a maximum of 16 years in jail for the wrongdoing. The change was proposed on the 8th of May 2014 and became effective on the 1st of July 2014. It changed the Swedish criminal code for condemning an individual for homicide, stating that any individual who tries or does kill another person is condemned to stay in jail for at least 10 years and a maximum of 18 years. If the nature of the crime is extreme, they can be in prison for life. Previous to this, the correctional code stated that the most extreme sentence would be 16 years before the criminal would be qualified for parole. Under the new law, the criminal can be condemned to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In this case, Jonna could have been condemned to sentences along these lines. Due to an appeal, she would be retried under the new laws, with the possibility that she would be subject to the most extreme punishment. The case was then tried in front of the Court of Claims. The appeal was conducted on the 18th of March 2015, and it concluded that Jonna had intentionally murdered Emma. During an investigation with her, Jonna says she felt very bad the whole week before the murder. She couldn't eat or sleep. Jonna says she vomited almost every day and felt awful. She says she cried a lot and nothing seemed fun. She had even given up on the horses and wanted to give them away. As we know, she had loved her horses all her life. During this week, she went home to Peter and slept at his place all night. She did not want to be by herself, but they were fighting the whole week and they didn't talk to each other. They mostly text. It was very tough the night before the murder. She just thought and hadn't slept for days. She kept wondering if there was something she could do to make it right. But her search history and all the things she brought with her on the day tell another story. 4 days after she returned her keys, she had carefully mapped out her victim. She had also Googled how to kill someone and how to carry and dispose of corpses. She had searched the easiest way to kill someone, how to hire a hitman, how to kill someone, how to get convicted for a murder without the body, hitting someone with a hammer, injecting alcohol, jumping in front of trains, and autopsy after suicide. She had also watched a lot of Dexter episodes, and she had made searches about the methods in which the character Dexter murders and disposes of his bodies. Jonna has frequently stated in front of the different prisoners that she believes it's exceptionally odd that her ex betrayed her. She says that she's exceptionally astounded that he didn't need to converse with her. She says, "Yet we had a house together and everything." Jonna is currently serving life in prison for the murder of Emma in Sweden's highest security facility for women. She's been causing trouble by refusing to take provided drug tests, setting off alarms, and even fell in love with a friendly inmate who got so uncomfortable she was asked to be moved away from Jonna. Jonna then started sending a lot of letters, declaring her love in one, but threatening to send contacts to hurt the inmate's little brother in the next. The inmate was granted a restraining order and hasn't heard from her since. Jonna reads a lot about Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini, and when asked why, her only answer is history. The murder investigation is a gross and unimaginable story about a brutal and very prolonged murder. a cute and innocent-looking girl with no previous criminal record. When you look at her, you realise that evil can trick anyone. If you were to meet this girl in the dark, most people would have thought they had nothing to fear. The look on her face in the photos taken just a few hours after disposing of the dismembered body in the woods shows a girl that looks far from sinister, but apparently looks deceiving. She waited in the stairs for ages. She also wandered back and forth to her car. She says, quote, "I kind of didn't know if I even dared to do it." This shows that she had plenty of time to come to her senses and leave, but apparently she felt she had no choice but to kill her rival. The creepiest thing was, after she killed Emma, she left a letter for Peter saying, quote, "Hi. Considering your silence towards me, I have realised that you have not chosen me, so I thought I'd stop by to collect my things. I was greeted by a furious Emma. Glad to see you've already moved on. I'll mail you your key and remove all things that might remind you of me from your apartment. I hope you and Emma will be very happy together. She reminds me of you when she's angry. Take care. I will always love you, Peter. Hugs from your Jonna." There are causes worth dying for, but not killing for. End quote. But it's not always true, is it? What do you guys feel about this? Isn't it crazy what extreme foolishness people in love can do? Just let me know in the comments. That was all for today's episode. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future crime thrillers. Till then, take care. And in the meantime, maybe just make sure your ex doesn't watch Dexter.